The competency framework, a warm welcome to all of you. And as I can see, we have people from all around the globe present in this webinar. A more than warm welcome for this very interesting webinar. My name is Marcel Voederer. I'm going to act as a moderator today, but we also have very knowledgeable and experienced people in that area that we are going to talk about here present in this group. Like you can see here, we have John, Andrea, and Sam. I'm put on the right hand side, but John, do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. So my name is John Ruppel. I've been, working with DASA for the last 5 years, working with the standards, creating these great tools, and then out in the trenches, putting them to real world use with some of our world's leading organizations and having a lot of fun doing it.
Fantastic, thank you. And I should have started with ladies, of course, because ladies first, but Andrea.
I'm happy to go in order. Thank you, Marcel. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea usually. I am new to DASA. However, I am an expert in learning and performance strategy, currently working active Shapo on that. And my background is in education and specifically competency development and competency assessment. So I was really excited to come in with DASA to help build out this framework.
Okay, and then last but not least, we have Sam here. Sam.
Yes, well, thank you again for having me. I am a transformation consultant. I coach and train people to help transform their companies into more efficient and digital ready organizations. I mostly do this in Holland, basically because I live there, and that's quite useful. And sometimes I do stuff for DASA, like working with these great minds together to make this competency framework. And we're really happy and anxious to introduce it to you.
Anxious even, okay. Thank you. Before we continue, first, of course, we have some housekeeping rules. We are recording this session, and so the recording and the slides will be made available to all of you. So don't worry, you can always watch this recording at a later stage. During the webinar, you can use the webinar chat function to ask your questions. But at the end, we have a specific moment that we will go through all the questions that are asked, but feel free to ask any question. And also your feedback at the end of the session. We practice what we preach, and DevOps is all about feedback. So also here we want to hear and what your feedback is. So your feedback is welcome, and also to improve the webinar and the content as well. So thanks in advance for your feedback already. But let's start about what DASA is first. So DASA stands for the DevOps and Agile Skills Association, and that's an open global community for DevOps and Agile skills development. It's there since around April 2016, and DASA has become a fast-growing global DevOps movement, providing global certification in DevOps and competence development. DASA is backed by more than 300 partners and more than 1,000 companies, enterprises who are working with DASA to fuel their DevOps journeys. In 2020 alone, DASA certified experts in more than 48 countries. DASA's focus is on developing high-performing DevOps teams that are equipped with both technical skills and capabilities to lead organizations in this digital age. Experts at DASA believe in sharing their knowledge through insights and working groups research initiatives to enable successful DevOps transformations and develop thought leadership within the community. We do this through these 4 key areas: guidance, community, talent, and recognition. So when we look at guidance, we offer access to guidance materials that are created by the various working groups we have in place. When we look at communities, these communities are very powerful. It's a very powerful way to advance the movement of DevOps. When we look at talent, the third pillar, so DASA created a new education hub that contains a range of talent management resources designed to create a continuous learning culture for members. And it helps to map your teams with the exact needs to optimize their development. When we talk about recognition, it is helping organizations to celebrate their successes and advancements via awards and helping organizations build employer branding to attract the right talent. So what are we going to talk about in this webinar? We are going to talk about what is unique about the competency framework, what the goal is of the company's competency framework, what the competency framework is in detail, and how can you use the competency framework. One part is presented by Sam, followed by Andrea, and then we have John.
Okay.
Sam, can I ask you to take it over?
Yes, please. Can I have another click? Yes. Okay, and I want to get into why we built this competence framework. From what we get from Gartner, Forrester reports, and all other thought-leading companies, is that most digital transformations fail. And this can have many, many reasons. And we wanted to provide tools, or a tool that can help organizations get better equipped so they can face the digital age with confidence and get lasting results. Can I get the next click? Sometimes we think we already built the right thing, and somehow IT or the users always will find a way to abuse the system or use it incorrectly, which could potentially end in a disaster. That's one way to look at it. Next slide, please. Sometimes we think we use the correct tools or the right mechanism, the right tools. But we haven't spent time on training our personnel or customers to use this tool correctly. And again, this results in disaster. I don't know if you can see this clearly, but go back one. Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you can see this clearly, but there's a van in the water and this crane tries to pick it out of the water. And then also the crane falls into the water and needs another crane to get it out of the water, and then also falls into the water. So this was a nice cascading failure example. And these sometimes hilarious things still happen in IT every day. Can I have the next one, please? What we also know is that changing culture and moving companies into a more digital ready phase of their existence is hard because companies and organizations have been using or have been working in a certain systemic way. Sometimes things need to be unlearned and some things need to be enforced and or encouraged. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what we saw and what we found as working group is that our international group of experts is that we needed a model that not only could support the individual, but also on a team level and also on an organizational level. So we started with the basics. What kind of competence model could help us to ensure that we have a better chance at supporting and succeeding at transformations? Next slide, please. Another click. Yes, thank you. So we started looking at models that help us with recruitment. So looking at profiles, what is a DevOps engineer and what does a DevOps engineer need to do? What are the roles that companies have at the moment? And also looking at interview questions. And we found that existing models either were lacking or did not provide this all-in-one package. Next slide, please. So we wanted to start where the employee journey starts, which is in the onboarding. You get welcomed aboard by the captain, and then you can do some hopefully some pretty miraculous and fun things. But also, next slide, please. What's up?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But also, we needed a model that supports personal growth. And it's what I call interest management. I think John agreed on this, and we kind of worked this theory out, is that there are skills that people use in their private life that could also potentially benefit organizations that they work for. So it's really interesting to see how you can use them. Okay, next slide or next click, please.
Yes, sometimes my PC is a little bit slow, so sorry for that.
Sometimes my head is also a little bit slow, so maybe we can use that. Okay, we need a framework that provides strategy for team growth. You know, and if you look at Tuckman's stage of group development, we have lots of theories available to help support team growth. But we needed something more practical, something that could monitor and enhance the skills that the teams need to try and become a high-performing team and stay on that road. Yeah, next click, please, Martin.
Okay.
Yeah, and last but not least, you know, offboarding is also a very important step. We felt that when a person leaves a company, we needed better strategies to not only show we have a great culture when people are working here, but also, you know, when they potentially leave. It's for the sake of both the organization and the employee or ex-employee that it's wise to keep a friendly connection, even if there's a separation because of career growth or a different opportunity that comes up. Who knows? You know, this person might want or need to come back later in the organization, so it's very important to keep this door open for opportunities, and you know, this works both ways. So it's very good that we also focus on the offboarding part. And next click, please. And again. Yeah. So our Ds to improve the individual's level of competences also requires that it needs to be measured. Otherwise, there's no target to improve to. To measure is to know something. And next click, please. And this is also important for the team. We need to know what the skills the team needs now and in the future to support their part of the service or the complete application or their part of the website. Next click, please. And yeah, this is the best part. It's great that when you reach a goal, you know, that you take time to celebrate this, to really focus on the target that you achieved. And we wanted a framework that also focuses on the rewards and recognition part of a career. Next slide, please. And again. Yeah. Thank you. So in short, we needed a model that could support career development. You know, grow your brain, grow your interests, grow your skills, grow your competencies. And the next slide. Next click, please. And in our research with both Andrea, John, and the team, we found that we found 52 competencies that we needed to help grow from a beginner level to an expert level. And then the last one. And we also defined 16 roles for now. And you know, this whole framework could help you focus on your own specific growth path, your team growth path, or your organizational growth path, and really supports your organization to undergo and survive this digital transformation. Thank you. Andrea?
Thanks, Sam. So now that we've sort of established why it's important to have a competency framework, I'd like to dig into the details about what it is and how we went about creating it. So the structure of the framework is built based on research in educational sciences, including professional didactics, as well as experience working with human resources and talent professionals. The content of the framework was established with the inputs from some of our experts here in DevOps transformation, industry leaders, and engineers with extensive experience in DevOps environments. Together, our working group leveraged our own experience, as well as benchmarking against top organizations who have successfully implemented DevOps. So what is it exactly? If we can go on to our next slide. So what is it exactly? A competency framework is a tool that defines the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and attributes that are needed by people so that they can act within a particular situation. In this case, the situation is their day-to-day job within the context of a DevOps environment. So this framework takes into account the DASA DevOps principles, a number of core competencies, as well as technical capabilities. All of these have been mapped to indicators, the theory, behaviors, or traits, which then allow us to assess mastery in the given competency area. Next slide, please. Our framework has 3 main sections. The first section is built on DevOps principles and values, customer-centric action, creating with the end in mind, end-to-end responsibility, cross-functional autonomous teams, continuous improvement, and automate everything you can. These 2 are accompanied by sample indicators to help us pinpoint whether or not an individual has developed mastery in the competency area. Here you can see a sample of create end in mind, what that means when we look at it in terms of a competency and how we can determine if somebody possesses it. Next slide, please. The second area is our core competency families and the sub-competencies which make them up. This includes self-regulation, or one's ability to manage, coordinate, and evaluate their own activity, critical thinking, collaboration, DevOps leadership, and DevOps business management capabilities. The competency framework goes deeper into each of these areas and identifies a number of sub-competencies related to them. For example, within critical thinking, we have problem solving, risk analysis, and sense making. Within collaboration, we have included things such as communication, teamwork and dynamics, and coordination and flow optimization. So the definitions and indicators that you would have access to in this framework are not the generalized material that you could find on a quick Google search about what it means to be good at critical thinking or collaboration. They are really focused on how these competencies translate into a DevOps environment. Next slide, please. Thank you. Finally, our last area is around technical capabilities, and there are a lot of technical capabilities, so I'm not going to enumerate them here, but you can see them listed on the slide. I think what's interesting for you to see is how we've adapted the indicators within the technical capabilities section. We cover common technologies, important concepts, theories, and models, characteristics to look for, and the skills or abilities that are required to be able to implement these effectively. Next slide, please. From there, these competencies have been mapped to 16 job roles across DevOps, engineering, leadership, product and flow facilitation, and governance. Our expert practitioners then rated the expected level for each role within each competency. On the screen here, you see a sample of what that looks like for the role of a test automation engineer who needs risk analysis at an intermediate level. Animation. So we can see in the expert what that means. This definition for risk analysis: take action to identify, assess factors which may jeopardize the success of a project or goal, and then some indicators to help us identify mastery. We would expect someone competent in risk analysis to collect and leverage data to inform their analysis, to quantify risk severity, to have mitigation strategies in place, and to develop contingency plans in case those fall through. The framework itself is quite extensive and has a number of different applications, but I'll pass it over to John to talk us through them.
Thanks, Andrea. Next. Yeah, so, the big question here is, Sam had introduced, the concept of failing, right? We have been, I say the industry as a whole has been failing for the past decade and continues to fail at their agile and DevOps adoptions and transformations for several reasons, but the main reason is we don't understand culture. And so we got to take it back, and how we apply this framework, the competency framework, we actually have to take a step back and look at that big picture to address that failure, how we can correct that failure. So what we're showing here is a slide that several of you that, if you've been around DASA for the last several years, you're doing consulting with your clients, you've been in the certification classes, this slide is probably pretty familiar to you. And this really is one of the most prolific slides that we teach, or sets that foundation for DASA for the competency framework. And it's simply that when you go into your organization and you're working with clients about what does it mean to transform, you can show them this slide and you can say, literally, we're going to spend the next 2 to 3 years making this slide a reality. And that's really what it's about. Next. So the focus there is on the competencies. And next. And what we've been doing for years is we've been showing the team competency model. So a lot of you guys are familiar with this, and this has been really great in grounding the conversations. Next. When we talk about the conversations, typically when you're working with your clients or trying to understand, transformations and the framework and all this stuff, these are typical questions that come up. And the key is to have that conversation. And that's why the team competency model is such an important part to drilling down into this, or the segue or entree into the competency framework. Next. So to help you with that, we've created an organizational guide. And again, Andrea was saying, she mentioned this is complex. And if you, were listening to how Andrea was saying the intricacies of what you can do with this, it's really profound. And the key thing I want to emphasize here is, or comment on, these competencies and competencies, they translate into the DevOps area. This is why, what we're showing you does not exist today. You're the first group. This is the first group. I've been working with DevOps for a long time with people all over the world, and this is the most comprehensive tool set to this magnitude, drilling down to this amount of detail that we have today as a tool set to work with. And so that's why this organizational guide is so important, because it sets the context and gives you, from a, just trying to simplify that, how do we work with this? How do I work with this framework? Well, we're used to recruitment, onboarding, skills development. So this is what the organizational guide does, is it gives you some framework, some context for how to start thinking about the competency framework and how to apply it in your real world, doing these things that we're used to doing. Next. So then the next piece of the puzzle here, the next guide, is the competency framework guide itself. Now this is where we drill down into, and you can see there's 43 pages where we get into the job roles and competency levels by job family. And this is where it really provides decision makers the information they need, the knowledge they need to make informed decisions in real time, going back to, this isn't just generic stuff, roles and skills and competencies. These are all, the group has worked a long time in making sure that we're funding in the foundational level is on the DevOps arena. Next. Which, when you go into the framework itself, one of the, and you start getting comfortable with it, and you start working with your clients, and you start working with your teammates, and you start working with your organization to say, hey, how are we going to transform? What do we need to do? This is really where the rubber hits the road, and it's the most granular piece here. And so you can see we have a competency, on top, that very small row at the top of the table there, and then it has the sub-competencies as pillars underneath it supporting the main competency. And then you're going to see the couple columns there with job categories and job roles. And then you're gonna notice that matrix there of all these numbers. So what is that all about? Well, really what we've done is we've went through with our panel of experts, and we've synthesized, and we went through what for that organization to be successful with that individual in that role, for each sub-competency, what level of skill set do they have to have so that they can be successful in that competency overall. And if you guys go back to that competency team, the team competency model that we've been using for years, we always talk about T-shaped profiles. So what this competency framework is doing is it's taking now to an exponential level the granularity and insight and understanding we can get to those T-shaped profiles, which did not exist before. And that's why we're so excited to bring this to you guys today, and we're so excited to get it out there in the marketplace, because we really need this. My client, customers and clients out there, members of DASA, we need this. Next. So now let's dive into some use case. We just covered the what. So what is the framework? What is the organizational guide, the competency guide? Show the matrix there. Now let's get into some real scenarios. So human resources, right? How many of you guys have been out there? Hey, I got to get a job rec posted, and we got to do a job opening. So at that point, what do you typically do? Where do you go? Well, this is where you can dive into our table and you can look at, okay, this is what I need. And it gives you a lot more information than you've had in the past, so that when you write that job rec, you're very specific, which really helps in the hiring process. And that goes back into, we're going to bounce here. If you look at the organizational guide and what we talk about in the organizational guide, it's how to use for recruiting. We get into some of these particulars. Next. So what happens if you're a person and you're wondering, hey, I'm working here, I'm working with the team, we're having fun, we're flowing value to the customer, but what can I do to improve? What do I have to do to be a better teammate, or better support my customer, or go up in pay salary, or my skill set? What do I have to do? Well, this again is, they can look at the skills, they can look at the different roles, and from here they can then put together where their gaps are, and what courses or what training or what supplemental areas they have to do to go grow themselves, challenge themselves, and fill that gap. Next. Another situation that we're all familiar with, trying to, with companies adopting Agile and the DevOps way of thinking and doing, is a Scrum Master. Scrum Masters are there. You have this team that's formed up, and they're working with decision makers, and they're saying, hey, look, going back to the whole, what we talked about with the team competency model, before we were at a pretty high level, but now with the competency framework, we can really dive into really what do our developers really need? What does that product owner, or the product owner that I'm working with, that I'm partnering with as a Scrum Master, what do they really need? And so now you can really have the granularities there, that if you have two competing resources that are pretty close, with the competency framework, now we're able to have that more granularity to make those decisions when it's a close race between a couple resources. Also, it removes, and then the other thing too is, if you think about the circular conversations, I'll say, about skills that you've heard in the past, when you're trying to figure out teammates and how to make this work, have you really had something definitive that really defines this for you? And the question there is probably not, right? Which again is why this framework came to be. Next. Now we're talking about, let's think about the senior leaders, right? Decision makers, people high up in the organization. They're not really hands-on. They may not be hands-on with everything that's going on, but now what they're trying to do is evolve the organization's culture to be product, moving from project. So they're going from project to product, flowing value to your customer. And that's really where the industry trend is right now. And so this is where, if you're that senior leader, now you can look at the framework. Now you can work with your HR folks. You can have a resource management strategy, a resourcing model, a skills growth model, and now you can make those decisions on, hey, do I bring in some consultants? Do I bring in some talent and hire in real quick? Or do we have the time to get our product pipeline built out? It's going to take us a year to build up the pipeline and really get the product flowing. Do I really have a year of growth then that I can do a training strategy or growth strategy for my resources? So this is where the leaders of the organizations that I've worked with in the past and even today in the present, we have not had this level of granularity to make those decisions as definitive as what we provide today with the framework. And then again, this is why that's so critical to the senior decision makers out there. Next. And so the final comment here is about, using use case scenarios. How do we use this? Is look at yourself, right? You're looking in the mirror, who is that person, right? And what is their career path? Where are they going to go in their future? What do they need to do to remain relevant in the world? If you think about it, project management, program management has been around for decades, but with Agile and Scrum coming on board, project managers, program managers, well, it's product ownership or Scrum Master is really the areas that you need to start diving into. So what do I need to do to transition so I remain relevant and I can, continue earning money to pay the bills, support the family, or continue my path because I really enjoy it, however you want to approach it or whatever your personal views are. This is where the competency framework then gives you that definitive definition and the layout that in clarity that you can visualize and internally figure out for yourself, hey, what's going to be best for me and how can I best plot my path forward in a strategy? And I can tell you, if we went back in my career, more than I want to admit, decades ago, I wish I would have had this framework because I think I would have had a much better, cleaner trajectory to get to where I'm at today, following the path if I had something like this in front of me. So Marcel, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, John, Andrea, and Sam, for your wonderful explanation about why we have this framework, what it is, and how it can be applied. And hopefully you get already a very good idea how unique actually this framework is in the world. In the meantime, we received a number of questions. So let me check those questions and let's see. A question from Germany. Can we use this competency framework for teams, or is this meant only for individuals? Who wants to give an answer on this?
Sure, I'll take this one. I think I already mentioned this in the slides, but okay. For clarification, this model fits the individual's growth path, both on the individual's career as well as the individual's place within teams. The teams, you know, if we're looking at we've always been talking about this T-shaped profile, right? And you need a couple of T-shaped profiles to support your application. You're part of the website, or you're part of the service that you're delivering, that you're flowing value for, as John always says. I really like that quote. Yeah, so and even on the organizational level, because if you get this together and if you work in a grid or a guild or whatever kind of group composition you have, but you have dependencies between teams, then it's really important, you know, to see, okay, how can we potentially scale up these teams? Which skills do these individual teams need, and how can we move this group of teams forward? And I don't care what kind of scaling mechanism you use, we're not there to discuss that. But we are really talking about the culture of, you know, working together, being customer-centric, working with that customer-centric mindset, and, you know, providing this, well, great organization, or this great psychological safe workplace. And we see this in the skills, you know, how can we do this? What do we expect from people to perform and to survive in these challenges that you have in this digital age?
Fantastic. Somebody who wants to add something on this answer? No, then we also received a very interesting question from Mexico. Can I adopt this for my own organization and make changes to better fit our roles?
I'll take that one. Yeah, so absolutely yes, right? So consider this guidance. You know, this is what I really like about working with DASA, is that we have all these frameworks, we have all these methods, we have all these tools. And this competency framework is just like all the other tools. You know, there is no right or wrong. There's what works for you and yours. That's really what it boils down to. And so the key here is understand the context. And this is what Andrea, you know, is really diving into, is describing for you guys the context and the spirit that this was created. And then Sam showed us, you know, some pieces there, you know, from an application or ways to think of it from a global view, and to be successful in where you could apply it into. And so that's where, you know, for you guys, everybody's gonna have a different situation out there. And so the key is to, from what we've created, again, make it, tailor it to work for you.
Okay, thank you, John. A question from this time in the Middle East. Okay, interesting. How do the 6 core values and the 5 competency families compare or relate?
So I guess I could take that one again if you want.
Yeah.
So the key thing here, so you're really pushing my buttons, because culture, right? I'm all about culture. And so the key here is that when we talk about the 6 core values, as Sam was alluding to, it's all about culture, right? And so what these competency families do is the competencies themselves and their sub-competencies, the culture, the core values provide the guardrails to set the culture up. So if you talk about leadership, you can look at the competency families, you can look at the sub-competencies, but then as you're growing and adopting, like the last question was, can you sort of form these to work for yourselves? Yes, but use the 6 core principles, the 6 core values as the guardrails to say, you know, transformational leaders versus transactional leaders. You want a transformational culture. So that means I need a value and belief set that's based on the 6 core values for transformational leaders. And in my leadership competency, now I look at it from that frame of mind. And so if you have the values and beliefs from the core values, that steers then or keeps you, it gives you the flexibility and allows you to then shift and move, I'll say, or, you know, again, adjust things to your situation in a safe way.
Okay, okay, very good. And a related question to that. So why did you guys pick these 5 competency families? Maybe that's a good question for you, Andrea, to answer.
Yeah, with pleasure. So these competency families were chosen based on our conversations, essentially. When we went in, we asked our experts, what are the competencies, what are the skills that you see in your teams, what are the things that you see as necessary? And we started getting long lists, right? Like easily we had like 100 ideas initially. And so we had to go in and we really had to pare them down to make it something that's much more, let's say, usable and approachable. So based on our conversations and these long lists of words, we went through the process of grouping them together, right? Figuring out, you know, what actually belongs together. So for example, problem solving, there's a lot of things that go into problem solving. And some of the things in our list included, you know, sort of models that were related to problem solving, or tactics, right? So we could actually just group those back together and put that in a category where it made sense. And problem solving makes sense inside of a critical thinking program, right along something like research and synthesis. So when it came to choosing those, it was about taking our list of thousands and thousands of ideas and putting it into something that made sense, in terms of the grouping, and that captured as many of the ideas as possible.
And Marcel, I just want to interject here. When Andrew was saying hundreds and thousands of ideas, you guys saw, maybe you saw Sam and I grin, like our teeth started showing and we were really grinning and almost laughing out loud. It's because literally that's what our team did. We have curated so many ideas for the past year to get down to this and what does it really mean to get these core competencies? And the master to that and our success is really Andrea, right? So I just want to give her the kudos now. But the reason why I'm saying that story and sharing that story with you guys behind the scenes is because this is what you're going to have to do with your organizations to be successful, is we're giving you the guidelines. Now, when you talk about leadership or problem solving, you task 10 people, they're going to come up with 10 different definitions or ideas or thoughts. And when you start drilling into the sub-competencies and the details there, you're going to, you know, exponentially, you're going to get, you know, 10 more, you know, 30 more. And so again, it just can't understate that enough, but that's really the journey you're on. And I just want to showcase that for folks to understand that, you know, please we've tried to make this as easy as possible for you, but as you, in your real world application, as you go to apply and digest this and understand it and apply it to your real world situation, you're going to go on the same journey we did. And it's a lot of fun. That's why you see us smiling and we're here and we got through it. We have differences of opinions at times, but it's okay because that's part of the journey. And that's why this is so critical and so important that, you know, we bring this forward to you.
Yeah, that's a great point, John.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add as well, like when we think about that list of thousands of things that we went through, some of them were skills and some of them were attitudes and some of them were knowledge. And so I often get asked the question, what's the difference between a competency and a skill? Why did we go to competency? Why didn't we use skills? And it's because of that. Competency captures all of that together, and so it made it a lot easier to group together versus just looking at skills, which is when we're thinking about really knowledge in action and our ability to act and perform. And I think sometimes we forget that being competent is more than just our skills.
And as long as John is now adding behind the scenes information, I would like to pitch in. Is that, you know, DASA really gave us this platform to do this. You know, otherwise I wouldn't have met Andrea, otherwise I wouldn't have met John. We're trying to get together for our working group, and yeah, we're looking for another 1 or 2 positions in our working group to work together with us on these. So on these type of projects or products, never say project anymore, so products. So yeah, so that we can all flow value to our customer, in this case, a worldwide audience. So I would like to take this small chance to invite you that if you think this is really interesting, contact any of us, or use the email address at the end of the presentation. Really get into this. If you feel motivated to help us, please get in contact with us. So we have probably more than 1,000 things that we thought about, and then we probably don't have the time for. So maybe you can.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam. And you feel that it is giving energy to the people in the working group instead of them using a lot of energy.
Sure.
Yeah, the amount of enthusiasm is fantastic. I would say, as they do in a television commercial, it's amazing.
It's a totally new, amazing discovery. Yes.
Okay, we have time for one last question. That question is from your soil, John, but you don't have to answer this one. Maybe this is better for Sam. For whom is the competency framework?
Yeah, well, again, it's for the individual. It's for the team at organizations, and to us, it doesn't matter, if whatever phase you're in, maturity-wise, right? If you're moving from a project program type of environment into testing the water, of agile, or you're really mature at agile and really looking into moving into the field of DevOps, looking at, okay, we have these competencies, we have these skills in the team, and we're looking at growing this a little bit more, setting some boundaries, setting some nice targets for our teams and individuals' growth. That's good. In Dutch, in Holland, we have this issue that if somebody overperforms, we'd like to cut them down and criticize them. Please don't use this mentality. Just use this skill framework to look at what you want and what you need in your life, in your working life, in your career development. Use it for your own benefit, and also just use it to grow and be like us, experiment and talk about the thousands of ideas that you have, and then try to shift it back into actionable items, and really we're really here because we wanted and we needed a framework like this on our consultancy work, on our training work, and also just become aware of, okay, these are the skills that I have, and these are the paths that I want to grow into, and how can I actually do this? This is the granularity that John talked about. We have all these, if you ask Google or whatever website, you can get all these frameworks, but now again, specifically we did this for the DevOps career path, and like John said, and Andrea, I think I said it as well, is that it's pretty unique. So it's basically for everybody working in IT and or everybody that wants to get into IT. You're all part of the family. Please join us and use this framework and give us the feedback. We don't have all the roles yet. We might just tweak the skills and the competencies a little bit here and there, but it's all about the feedback that we want from you guys. Please start using it and get back to us with the feedback.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, then actually we are reaching, also looking at the time, we are reaching the end of this interesting webinar. Thank you all guys for your valuable presentation. Thank you for your participation and listening to all of us and looking to the slides, and hopefully it delivers a lot of value for you. So thank you very much for that. And in case that you have questions, you can contact us via the email address mentioned in the slide, learning@devopsagileskills.org, or contact one of us directly. That's also possible. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, John. And have a very nice continuation of your day, evening, or morning.
Thank you for having us, and thanks for your wonderful presentation skills, Marcel.
Thank you.